Hello, thanks for tuning into this Bellwether Enterprise update. I'm Ryan Denchef, Marketing Content Manager, joined today by Ben Nichols, Director of Business Development here at Bellwether, and Liz Osborn, Vice President of Public Policy Advocacy at Enterprise Community Partners. Ben, Liz, thanks for both joining me this morning. So
Thanks
we
for having
remain
me.
in the midst of this pandemic with the coronavirus, and we wanted to share a little bit about what's going on in DC on the policy side, and also share how we at Bellwether work closely with our parent company, Enterprise. So I guess leading off, let's throw it to Ben. I want to start off, you were hired at Bellwether pretty recently, I think joining in February, but you came from Enterprise, working there for many years. So I think you're the perfect person to kind of describe the long-time relationship between Bellwether and Enterprise. So, if you could talk about how the relationship works and what makes it special within the industry and all things like that.
Sure thing. So, Enterprise Community Partners, which is the parent organization of all the Enterprise family, their goal is really to create affordable housing for all Americans and to put that affordable housing in vibrant communities across the country. So they like to do that through three different mechanisms: capital, which is where Bellwether falls in, and the capital on a mission tagline. And then there's programs and policy. And so the profits from organizations like Bellwether funnels up to Enterprise Community Partners so that we can do the programmatic and policy work. And at the same time, the policy folks and the program folks talk to the capital folks about what they see on the ground and what's going on and how we can be of assistance to them.
I think that's a great way to segue into the bigger picture, like I said, from the DC level, policy level. So Liz, let's kick it to you. From a policy perspective, I guess if you can start with, what's the latest that you're hearing going on in DC on the Hill, directions things are heading. And then I guess part two of that question is whether the policies that you're pushing for and you're hoping to achieve here as we progress through this, pandemic and beyond.
Sure. Well, the CARES Act, I think, as many people know, passed a couple of weeks ago. It was kind of the third package in coronavirus supplementals that Congress had passed. It included a lot of great resources for affordable housing and community development, about $12 billion for HUD to work on these issues, and a number of other relief issues, unemployment insurance, PPP, which is the Paycheck Protection Program, and a number of other really critical resources. So right now, what they're trying to do is replenish the PPP on the Hill, and Republicans want it to be a clean replenishment of $250 billion, while Democrats want other pieces of legislation included, funds to go directly to states and localities for them to use in response as they see fit, funds for healthcare workers, additional funds for SNAP and that sort of thing. So this kind of came to a head last week when the Senate was trying to pass the clean PPP, and Democrats kind of stood in the way of that happening by voice vote. And so negotiations have been going on all weekend. We were hopeful that there would be some sort of deal reached over the weekend, but it looks like there's still at a bit of an impasse. So I think they're still having conversations about what this package would look like, but hopefully they can come to some sort of agreement this week and then vote by voice vote in both the House and Senate to get that smaller package passed. And then the idea is that hopefully you can move on to a larger package again that will include more of the affordable housing pieces that we're working on that I'll talk about in a minute. I think the thing that's really interesting to watch is whether or not this package gets passed now. The PPP package gets passed this week. If it gets pushed out later, that could impact the timing of a larger package again. We'd originally thought that larger package might happen around April 20th when Congress would be back in session. But if this kind of 3.25 coronavirus package passes, which is this the one that just includes the PPP, then I think they'll get to work on this CARES 2, the larger package that could have some affordable housing and community development pieces in it pretty quickly. The hope is to have that done by April 20th. Complicating matters, of course, is that Congress might not come back into session on April 20th because that's when the virus is supposed to peak in DC. So there's just a lot of stuff that's up in the air. The first piece is whether or not the PPP passes this week. If it does and it's relatively clean, then I think you see that fourth larger coronavirus package sooner rather than later, towards the end of April. If Congress ends up packaging a lot more together in this PPP package that they're working on this week, then the larger deal could happen much later, maybe in May or so.
And you mentioned, some affordable pieces maybe coming in future legislation. I guess if you can speak on what those might look like, or maybe some things that you guys are hoping to see where some of that is concerned.
Yeah, so I mean, negotiations are really kind of just starting. I think you'll see this larger CARES 2 deal originate in the House. And so you've started to see some of the language and proposals coming out of the House. The Senate hasn't been working on it quite as much yet. I think they're starting to think about it over there. So there's a lot of opportunity to advocate for the pieces for our policy priorities, and that includes rental assistance, as well as operating assistance for landlords and affordable housing providers. Our policy proposal there revolves around the home program. So we are suggesting $48 billion for home included in this CARES 2 package. That can be a little bit of a sliding scale. I know that there are other rental assistance pieces that are kind of floating around. If they do some big rental assistance piece, like the Waters proposal has $100 billion for rental assistance under the ESG program, if that makes it into the final deal, that's wonderful, and the home funding could be a little bit different, but we want to make sure that operating support gets in there as well. The other piece that we're really focusing on for the CARES 2 deal is rural development. This funding for USDA rural housing service programs was actually left out of the first CARES Act. And this is a really critical need that we're seeing. So making sure that we get funding to support those rural communities that we're working in is a high priority for Enterprise. The one other thing that I would say is that Congress is writing these bills right now. So if you have an issue that you want to make sure is included in the next CARES 2 package, I'd encourage you to call or email your member of Congress today and make sure your voice is heard.
All right. Well, I think that pretty much wraps up this quick update. Thank you both again for joining me here today, and maybe we'll have another update here soon once some of this legislation kind of finally makes its way through the legislation process. So thank you both again. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Liz.